All right, welcome back. I think this is going to be Pantry Door episode number 4. Doors all glued up, panels in. This would be where the latch goes. This is the hinge side up here. I got it sitting like this because I need to plane off just a little bit off of each side. The door's just a tad wide. This is the old pantry door right here, and it's 17 7/8 wide, and I gotta trim this down just a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is set the planer just to knock just a little bit off at a time. I'll do one side, do the other side, and then it'll be to width. And then what we'll do is trim these little legs off because it is right at the right height. So trim these off, and then the glorious job of sanding begins. I thought I had a router bit to knock off this back lip to where the glass is gonna go, but my router bit, the rabbit bit I have, is not big enough. So I'd ordered one, so I gotta wait until that gets in. But the idea is I'll knock this lip off here all the way around, and that's the glass will sit in there. All right, let's get started. Do a little planing. I love it when measurements happen to come together for me in this shop. Measure twice, cut once, right? That's the old mantra. I'm usually like measure multiple times, 8, 9, 10 times, and cut multiple times. But so I've got the existing door laid out over the new door down there. And I don't know if we can see that. That sucker, I like it, is dead on. Dead on. So I got exact height. So basically what I can do now with this is obviously transfer where this hole needs to be. I'm sure there's probably some standard height on a door latch where it needs to be, but can transfer that, can transfer all this, the door latch. But more importantly than that is transferring where the hinges need to be cut out. So can transfer these lines, mark it, and start to chisel that out. Basically, I think in my head, how I'm working is make all these cuts chisel, mark where the chisel needs to be, mark where the door latch needs to be, cut all that stuff, right? Test it in the kitchen, test it in the pantry, make sure it works, it's free, clear from anything rubbing, and it's going well. Then once that's smooth and I get a good feel from that, then we'll bring it back out, do all the sanding, rabbet out the back for the glass. Once the final sanding's done, we stain it, and then start to finish it, and then hang it one last time in there, and voila, new pantry door. All right, so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna chisel out these marks, or out the hinges, mark where the latch goes, test fit, all that jazz. I don't know if we can do all that in one video, and the final hanging, everything. That might be a little much. So I may split this into just 2 more parts. We'll do this one with the cutting and dry fitting, and then maybe the final one is the finishing and hanging. All right, let's get to it. All right, so I've marked out where the hinges will go. And you can see it's basically just a little line. At first I was thinking I'll do the curve, but I'm not gonna do that. So I'm using these little marker knives. Basically score a line lightly. Eventually you get a decent line here, and it's a lot more accurate than a pencil. And then what I'm doing is coming back, following those lines, and marking it out a little bit deeper with the chisel. I've got 2 chisels here, but I'll probably, for most of this, I'll just use this 1/2-inch chisel. I probably could do with an inch or a 5/8, but that's my go-to chisel. It's nice and sharp. So that's the game plan. Mark these out and then chisel them down, and then test fit the hinge in. Make sure it's nice and fits right, and then mark the holes, attach the hinges, and go test it in the doorway. See what happens. And hopefully it fits. Trying the head cam because the mounting kept falling over. So let's try this again. Basically just taking little nibbles out. I think I just hit the camera. It's all right. We'll get used to it. All right, welcome back. I had to do some serious shop cleanup this morning. Place was looking mess. There's tools everywhere, so I had to do a little cleanup this morning. And now I give you status on the door. So this is the door at this point. This is the back. This would be inside the pantry. So we've routed out this back lip. You've got a lip here that the glass will sit up against, and then these brackets will they're bent at a 90 with a little screw and a rubber tip, and that holds the glass flat against this back. I've got this taped off here, so when I start staining the inside edge here, I'm not getting anything on here because I don't want to stain this the same color. That was real dark. Sorry about the camera work. Every once in a while you'll see some of these, this is where some gaps were, and so why is it darker? Basically what I did is during the sanding process, you generate this fine sawdust here. And so what I'll do is mix that with the stain that I'm gonna use, kind of create like a little slurry, a little paste, like wood putty, and basically then I'll use that, fill in the gaps. Then when you come back and stain it, you're none the wiser. It blends right in. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna flip this, but you can see I've got the door latch and the handle hole already cut. Now what we're going to do is we're going to flip this and sand the other side. So this is sanded right now to 120. We'll do the same thing on the other side to 120, and then what we're going to do is set up the sawhorses, run a couple screws on the top and bottom, and support that between the sawhorses. Do a final sanding, and then put the stain on it. Let that set up. And then what? Let that set up, and then we'll put the finish on it, and then we'll hang it, and it'll be all set. So the shop is quickly filling up. You'll see there's a stack of wood here. What the hell is that for? Basically, that is chestnut. Score. Actually, it's done. Well, it's mine right now until I build the table. So I'm going to be building a farmhouse table for a friend of mine and his wife for their house. He had this chestnut on his property. I don't know, I think he said that this chestnut's like 100 years old. It was from logs. They milled it down a few years ago. And here's where we're at. So we got to pick through that, pick out the good pieces for the tabletop. And this is going to be a cool top. Because you can see there's a lot of splits and checks. We're going to get the best pieces that we can, but all of those little splits and checks, okay, those are cool, but what we're going to do is fill those with black epoxy. That's going to be the tabletop, right? It's going to be a standard tabletop, breadboard ends, 37 wide, I think it's 8 foot long, but it's got a cool little base, an X base to it. And so we'll have to double some of these up. The plans that this guy liked, it calls to use all 2x4, 2x10, 2x8, I think. So what we're gonna have to do is kind of mimic those dimensions. We'll double up some of these, glue them, run them through the planer, get them down to the right size, and then make our base with it. So that should be a real cool project. We'll have that coming up. And then you also see over here, this cooler. I make a bunch of these coolers. Basically what this is all pallet wood. This was standard, I don't know, 52 quart igloo cooler. It's inside, and then I take the pallet wood and just wrap the exterior. I put in a little drain, hose spigot. It drains from the inside. This thing's filthy. It's got a little pop top, and then I'll burn whatever they want on the front and top. Names, logos, whatever. These are Boston fans. They wanted the Boston B on it, and then the Red Sox on the top. But the initial ones that I made of these I burned and then I sealed it with like a Thompson's water seal. But the burn, if you're keeping it outside or whatever, it fades big time. I never really anticipated that. So what I'm doing now with these new ones, I burn it, but then I use 2-3 coats of a spar varnish, and it helps it from fading. And then of course we recommend that if you're going to keep it outside in the sun, use like a grow cover or something to put on, and it'll last a lot longer. So we'll have a short video of reburning this logo and this one, and then you know, finishing it up for those folks so they can have their cooler back ready for summertime. So that's it. Let's flip this door, get sanding on the other side, and get crack-a-lackin'. Thanks for joining. All right, mad scientist style, little chemistry experiment. Let's make up some slurry, some paste. All right, we got it mixed up. Basically just taking it and filling any little gaps that there are, which, you know, it's my woodworking, so it's a shitload of gaps. Probably shouldn't say that on YouTube. Can you curse on YouTube? Ozzy Man does it. He's got like 1 million followers, so that's probably why he can do it. So that's basically it, and then we'll fill this, and then come back with the 120, sand it down, which will take some of the stain off, but you know, it's going to be the same stain, so it's just going to blend right in essentially. And yeah, you probably could use any kind of wood putty that can accept a stain, like it's got, usually there's wood putties that have like wood fibers in them and they accept the stain, but sometimes they don't come out after you stain them. You definitely can tell where you filled. I learned that from making wood strip canoes. I made 2 of those now, and I guess maybe it's an old, some of the books I read, it's old boat builders tricks. They basically take all the sawdust, and depending on how strong they need it to be, you can mix that with an epoxy. You can mix it with the wood glue too, but the wood glue tends not to accept stain. I mean, if you're gonna paint over it, that's great. And if that's the case, it doesn't really matter, because you're gonna paint over it. But yeah, it works out well. It'll hopefully blend right in. You won't even see it. Won't even know that I was inaccurate with my cuts and chisels. Most of these joints were actually, I think, really good. You know, I'm still a baby novice when it comes to woodworking and growing the skills, so. All right, I think that looks good. All right, got it all mounted up. Let's get some final sanding done. All right, stained up. That's the bottom, obviously. Top. It looks good. I'm not sure I want to go any darker than that. Put a second coat of stain on, but I think I'm liking how it looks. I think I'm gonna like that contrast too between the panel and that. Of course, when the finish goes on, the final finish, this will dark up a little bit, but I think that's looking good. All right, let's let that dry.